don't mind, what I'd like to do is just introduce our staff that's here, and then with your permission, I'll turn the floor over to Deb Schindel to walk through the questions in the package provided.
Okay, great.
So today we have Deputy Director Kevin Reed with us and Budget Administrator Matt Carpenter. And then from Property Management, we have Deb Schindel, of course, our Property Management, our rock star. Nicole Finney-Frock, our Assistant Property Manager, and Nicole Familero, who is in our HR section in Property Management. And I do want to acknowledge the CAO, Stacy Rogers, is also on. And we have other people from OBF here, but I'll introduce them when we do insurance and retirement. So Deb, with that, I'll turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
Well, actually, can we have Mark Marius from my office give the overview first?
I apologize.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark.
Okay. Good afternoon. The proposed fiscal year 2022 budget for the Office of Budget and Finance, Property Management Division totals $38.5 million, an increase of $1.7 million or 4.7% over the fiscal year 2021 budget, due primarily to increases in personnel expenses, contracts for services and maintenance, and gas and electric. On page 2, the pie charts show how the funding has increased since the division's inception in fiscal year 2013, and how proposed fiscal year 2022 funding will be allocated across programs and types of spending. Personnel costs for program, personnel, and administration services account for more than a third of spending, while the remaining costs are allocated to service contracts, heating and cooling, supplies, and other, which includes equipment maintenance, motor pool, and other items. On page 4, significant changes in the budget are summarized, including an increase of $744,000 for personnel costs, primarily for the COLAs, and $969,000 for operating expenses, primarily for contract cost increases for custodial, mowing, pest control and maintenance, and gas and electric. On page 5, our analysis identifies various fiscal year 2022 budget highlights, including some detail on the service contracts, and provides some information on capital projects. On page 6, the analysis identifies one specific potential budget reduction totaling $144,000 for the council's consideration. And we've also noted the possibility that the general fund savings may emerge as the county begins to utilize new funding awarded under the American Rescue Plan Act. More information on the spending for those ARPA funds may become available as the council considers the administration's request to appropriate the ARPA funds under Bill 42-21, which is on the council's May 27th agenda. Other topics for discussion, which begin on page 6, include personnel, service contracts, new initiatives and facilities, the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on operations, and capital projects. At this time, I'll turn it over to your discussion.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. And I apologize for throwing a curveball there, Director Blades and Deb, but I guess you could pick up where we left off. Thank you, Mark.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate all of your support that we have received from all of you throughout the year. So I think that's a really important statement to let you know. This operating budget that we have submitted is a full budget without any COVID reimbursement items in it. PM staff removed items such as additional cleaning for police stations on the weekends and additional staff for the large campus that is planned to be submitted through the ARP grant. PM is very passionate about the need to maintain the assets here and throughout Baltimore County. PM is responsible for over 700 building structures, and with 232 of them being major offices and community service buildings. As we have been forging ahead to catch up with some much needed equipment replacement and ongoing maintenance, I know we can count on your support in that effort in both preventive maintenance and to maximize the life expectancies of our assets. As we move out of COVID and back into normal business, there has been an increase in the expense area where parking lots, signs, and fences have increased. In the last 3 months, we have spent as much as we had spent in the previous 6 months on making those repairs. PM hired a civil engineer to be part of our ever-growing efforts in sustainability and this exciting creativity expansion of the rec sites. He will be assisting us in non-storm water management ponds, berms and swales and grading, rain gardens, and serving on committees to help implement the recommendations of these committees, such as climate control, and resiliency. Building maintenance positions is also an ongoing topic for many years. It has been and continues to be very difficult to compete with private companies that are offering increased wages and now sign-on bonuses. To give you one example, a position for an electrician 2 has been vacant for 2.5 years. Building supervisors and leadership met and came up with trying new creative ways to recruit. Teams suggested that we take our 2 positions, electric 2s, plumbers 2s, and make them 1 positions. And then to see if we could attract individuals who may want to be interested in coming into the county, giving them the experience they may need and encouraging them to go after their license so that we can move them up in those 2 positions. We have been working with that, and it has been working fairly well for us so far. This is also part of our succession plan, trying to create a depth in those positions. We obviously still need to give more complex repairs currently to contractors, but we have been in contact with the community college to investigate further opportunities and trying to recruit young people who want to come and work into Baltimore County. Our service contracts have increased over the past few years. Going back to 2013, the expanded services that have been added are high dusting in all of our facilities where there are very large gymnasiums and large areas where we cannot reach. We've increased our locations of window treatment and washing. We have actually created bed maintenance. Our irrigation systems are now being serviced and maintained regularly. We maintain newly renovated garages. Floor care, both vinyl and carpet, is actually done on a regular schedule, and this is only to name a few. Our custodial services have increased each year so that the companies can provide living wages to their staff. The decreased building maintenance staff, of course, related to the hiring issue, we have had to rely more on contractors, particularly in the more complex building repairs. Our ground contracts also have increased. With the inheritance of 50+ median strips, the acquisition of, and we are all excited about, that POS funding, we are gaining more properties to maintain. So naturally, we will be increasing. And in order to serve our increasing numbers of artificial turf fields, we have pulled our internal staff from mowing and bed maintenance and having them do those specialty type work in those areas that we have previously spoke about. As the county grows with new buildings and land acquisition, PM will continue to put a placeholder on the budget to anticipate the maintenance required by these sites. You have heard us talk about an energy performance contract, so I definitely want to give you an update about that exciting project. Obviously, we have been looking at Glenarm Drumcastle. We are still currently in our phase 1, where it is our energy audit feasibility study. However, we are currently reviewing 90% drawings, and then by the end of May, we will have 100% drawings with what is anticipated and what the company recommends and how we can save what they feel we should replace to save energy. At the end of June, we are expecting CEG Solutions to provide the final report to Baltimore County so that PM and our partners can review that. As we move forward, we will assess the energy measures that they recommend, and we will select as a team which ones we want to move forward on. We then will go to moving to drafting a contract, and then hopefully we will in the fall be in the phase 2 design and construction phase. That design and construction phase will take about 1.5 years to complete, but we are anxiously moving forward. Getting back to the impact of COVID-19 on operations, we want to assure you that anything we can possibly be charged to the ARP grant will be and was not projected in this budget. It is my understanding we are still waiting for guidance on what will be covered in that, but we are assuming that's why we did not put it in this budget. As you noted, we have many exciting new projects coming up with our partners in Rec and Parks. We are currently developing that timeline for all of those projects with them, and we will be working with them to provide you all more information on, as we do normally in our monthly reports. And of course, you can always ask Rec and Parks an update also. We also working on one of our athletic fields is being converted to LED lighting. We are in the middle of that conversion. So as we complete that job, we will be able to hopefully in the years out show their savings in the LED lighting and conversion. I hope that that was at least a tickle of what helps answer some of the concerns that you had, and we are willing to take any questions if you would like.
Thank you, Deb. Certainly appreciate it. And I guess before I go to the members, I will start with Mark and Lauren and Liz. Are you guys okay with the questions answered thus far?
Deb, maybe you can address the potential budget reduction that is listed on page 6.
Are you talking about the potential of the fact that you were one of the recommendations that you that you all had was the fact that I'm sorry, wait a minute. Are you talking about
$144,000 budget cut based on the possibility
Improvements,
of funds
right.
being available under the ARP?
Well, first we identified the 144,000 on its own, basically looking at half of what you requested for the budget, really based on spending to date, and then the following part, as far as ARP, is just saying to the extent that these funds are available, they could result in additional savings. So they're really two different ideas.
Okay, and I'll talk about that. Thank you. First off, we recognize that when you look at last year's spending, when it came to the fencing and the vandalism, the signs and all that, we didn't spend what we had, but of course, business was not as usual. As I mentioned earlier, in the last 3 months of those types of repairs, we have spent what we spent previously in 6 months. So we anticipate a large that going back to normal because we are coming back. And we expect that spending to be the level what we have projected. In addition to that, talking about the ARP, we did not include items in this operating budget. We already assumed that that grant would cover what we needed to. But again, we don't have the guidelines on whether it's going to cover. So this is a budget submitted without any COVID reimbursement items that were previously in it. It's actually just normal business.
Right, under the CARES Act, property management charged directly to the grant when it came to PPE related or cleaning supplies. Anything that was COVID related was charged directly against CARES. You won't see that in the property management operating budget. So the thought process is the same, that anything PPE, cleaning, anything that's COVID related will continue to be charged against the ARP. In addition to that, you know, you're going to see a ramp up of things that didn't, you know, maintenance that didn't occur because of COVID, because staff was delivering food and doing a lot of other tasks. So I would just ask that the council consider not taking this cut, so that we have the resources we need to keep moving forward.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions or comments from the members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Kathy.
thank you,
Councilwoman
Mr.
Devon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So before anyone gets into any questions, I do want to make a comment on how responsive your office is and how responsive you have been, Deb. You know, to get those monthly reports is an excellent way for us to update our constituents who have been asking questions about work that, you know, they've been wondering when it was going to get done, especially before sports starts. And even for those that don't inquire, you know, it's just nice to, people want to see their tax dollars at work for them. So it's nice to be able to say, hey, we're making these improvements, or this is getting done. So that's been very refreshing. And just on the personal note, I know that you met me at Double Rock Park one day so we could look at all the enhancements that have been made. Just to let you know that our state delegation has also secured another $150,000 for more improvements there. So that really got the ball rolling, and everyone in that area, you know, really appreciates that. So thank you.
Quite welcome. Thank you.
Any additional
Chair.
questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Councilman DeFoe.
Thank you. Ms. Schindel, how long have you been with Baltimore County?
Okay, so I have an interesting background. I joined Baltimore County in 2001, and I was with the Department of Aging. And so I was a director in Reisterstown, and then I went to Pikesville. So I have a little bit of love on that side of town.
All good places.
All good places. And then I went into Towson, and then I had the luxury in 2012 to be picked up as part of the merger to come here.
Okay. The reason I ask is because you have a history with Baltimore County. You've been here for a while, and it's refreshing to hear someone talk about their projects and property management, that they're all exciting after you've been here for a while. So I hope that excitement stays with you as you continue on in your mission to lead property management.
Thank you, sir. I promise it will.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, it's Crandall.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Crandall.
Thank you, Chairman. Deb, I too just want to thank you for your responsiveness. I know that we had COVID was an interesting time. Well, it's not over yet either, but we had an issue where one of our fields that a volunteer had committed his own money to clean up had fallen into some sort of disrepair and was overgrown. And I think it was only a matter of days after I contacted you that you had someone take care of it. So again, I appreciate your responsiveness. I do have a question though. Is something I've talked to the county executive about, and I'm just wondering if you and your division has any plans to increase the stewardship of our parks. And I don't know if this is a question for Rec and Parks or for property management. And I know that Ms. Rogers is in the meeting as well. We had expressed some time ago, probably about 5 or 6 months ago, I wasn't the only council member that expressed it, was that our parks are being heavily used, which is a good thing because we have beautiful parks all over Baltimore County and certainly in the 7th District. But the trash pickup, the maintenance of our parks, I know of 2 parks in my district where we've spent a lot of taxpayer dollars to create beaches and plant grasses, and the fences get beaten up. I'm not sure how they do that, but who's inspecting those and who's who's doing the upkeep, and do we have a plan for addressing the heavy use of our parks that are just getting inundated with people just not being very good citizens in the parks and leaving their trash behind and piling up trash that is that they're trying to dispose of, but the cans just aren't emptied fast enough. Is any of that being addressed? I see Ms. Rogers. I'm gonna let Stacy chime in here because this is something we had talked about a long time ago.
Well, if Deb, you have a comment, but Council Member Crandall, I do want to give you some updates on things we're doing actually between Rec and Parks and DPW, because this is something that Director Johnson has shared, and then Acting Director Walker has expressed and articulated the need for additional resources to address the additional trash. So that's something that we are working on. We are targeting some of the ARP funding to try to help with that, because we know the increase of trash is something, mitigating trash disposal is something that we can use ARP monies for. But overall, Director Johnson, I think, will articulate in her presentation on the agenda to, preserve our parks and ensure that our parks that have, as she says, that have been overused and got a little bit more love than what we anticipated because of the pandemic, because that was the one place that residents could go. The strategies that they're working on, because we do have some efforts coming. But I want to thank Property Management and DPW and Rec and Parks for working together. That whole notion of the wagon wheel that Mr. Gutwald had on his wall the other day that you all saw. We have to work together across the enterprise, because this was these are unprecedented issues that have come up. So that's what I'll say. Deb, if there's anything you might want to add.
So yes, ma'am, thank you. The other thing is, and it kind of links into what MMCO said, is that, Rec and Parks and Property Management have a very strong relationship together. We do try very hard to make sure that we are out as we're inspecting our sites, that we bring things to our internally into attention so that we can get them resolved if we find something, and that Rec and Parks is submitting work orders for work that they see. And we definitely are constantly in communication about that work load. But yes, we will continue to work very strong to make our parks the best we can.
Okay, thank you both. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Councilman Quirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deborah and the whole group at Property Management. I just wanted to jump on the bandwagon and also say really happy with the work that you guys are doing. And it shows, because honestly, no news is good news. A lot of times I'm being on county council, and when things are not working because your phones light up and your emails light up, and fortunately things have been working well. And so I guess with grass cutting time, grass cutting season coming around, your Property Management still handles all the median strips and everything, right? With, like, for example, Edmondson Avenue, the grass median strips is still under Property Management, right?
So ironically or not, majority of them are DPWs. I have about 50 of them, and I can share that list with you and let you know. But if there's a concern, regardless, just let me know what it is. And if it's not mine, I can work with DPW to get it taken care of. Which one are you concerned with, sir?
Actually, so far, I'm not going to wood because I don't want to jinx myself. But so far,
Okay.
I've seen people out there. People are doing a great job. And I literally, when I drive down the road, especially with all these medians and these grass kind of medians in particular, it just sends a loud message to the citizens, if we're doing our jobs and making sure they're cut. And, in the past, I'm talking, fortunately, years and years ago, we would get these stories like, oh, well, we only can do it once a month or something. And the grass would grow to like 3 feet tall. And that did not go well with citizens for sure, because we're expecting the citizens to do their job. And so, but no, this is a happy, pleasant comment that no news is good news. And I'm just glad to see these issues. A lot of them, 3, 4, 5 years ago were nothing but headaches. Fortunately, I've seen tremendous improvement. So job well done for all the people that are doing the hard work out there.
Thank you. I will share that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go right ahead, Councilman Mark.
Yeah, I will pile on here. Deb, you have been a terrific resource, and your office has done a 180 under this administration. One of the things that happened during the pandemic is people were at home. A lot of people were looking at that common area and looking at that decaying tree, and they wanted answers. And so your workload went up because we send you a lot of these requests. And you've always been professional, responsive, and I just want to congratulate you for a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. Councilman Marks, thank you very much for your comment. I also want to pile on and just say what a great job you're doing, Deb. And I would also like to also recognize Director Blades. All of this falls under his shop, and I think you are the type of supervisor that give people the room to do what they need to do. And I think that's where it all starts at the top. So thank you, Deb, and thank you, Director Blades. I know that you both are working very hard. Now, I would like to make a comment concerning first, I want to tell you I appreciate you working with the community college to fill those positions as an electrician. And hopefully that will be successful, because I really believe that, the county may not offer the tremendous salary that some of the private industry will, but in the long term, the benefit package that we offer in terms of retirement, I'm sure is very competitive with the private industry and people's 401k. So I want to just encourage you to continue to work that out with the community college and do what you can to bring people on. And I just think it's a great idea to just focus on young people in the community college and give them a path. I think, we can be a very nice feeder, or the community college can be a nice feeder for us in terms of attracting young people, and they can go through the community college and then end up working for us. I think that would be a win-win for everybody. And I think it's achievable. So I would urge you to just stick with it and keep that going. Any comments on that before we move on? Well, I thank you again. And if there's any other questions or comments before we move on to insurance.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure, thank you so much. Now, I guess we will move right along to insurance. And this time I'll start off with Lauren, our auditor.
Thank you.
Handle this one herself.
The proposed fiscal year 2022 general fund budget for the insurance contributions program totals $148.8 million, an increase of $4.6 million or 3.2% over the fiscal year 2021 appropriation. The increase is primarily attributable to additional funding for other post-employment benefits, OPEB, for county retirees. 59% of the budget is planned for health insurance for active employees. On page 2, you will see the budget history of the program and the composition of the proposed budget. On page 4, the analysis identifies various fiscal year 2022 budget highlights, and beginning on page 7 are the related topics for discussion, including OPEB funding, the county's contribution for general government active employee health insurance, and general government funding for liability claims. On pages 5 and 6, the analysis identifies one potential budget reduction totaling $38.3 million, which represents 25.7% of the proposed fiscal year 2022 insurance contributions budget due to excess funds in the Health Insurance Reserve Fund, which are available to use in lieu of newly appropriated funds to cover the cost of health care claims. This potential reduction keeps intact the full recommended incurred but not reported reserve, the full recommended claims fluctuation reserve, and 1/3 of the projected excess reserve funding. Historically, the Health Insurance Reserve Fund has been a major source of budget flexibility for the administration. And presently, the county's healthcare consultant projects that the county's health insurance reserve fund will be $57.5 million overfunded by the end of fiscal year 2021 and $81.2 million by the end of fiscal year 2022, assuming no reversions, transfers, or reductions. At this point, I would like to turn over the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkinson. And on this note, I'd like to introduce none other than Director Ed Blade.
Here I am again. Before we get started, again, we have Kevin Reed and Matt Carpenter with us, but I also would like to recognize Ruth Ann Robust, our analyst for the insurance division, and Becky Ellis, our health insurance administrator, along with Mark Lynn, who is our consultant from Bolton, who will be available to, and he will be assisting on a couple questions here as we move forward. So let's start with the big hit, the potential reduction of $38.5 million. So we do have a large balance in the health insurance reserve fund, but I'd like to talk through, give you a little bit of background and talk further on it. So when considering adjustments specific to the available fund balance in the Health Insurance Reserve Fund, you have to consider the OPEB Trust Fund at the same time. We have three groups receiving healthcare benefits. We have active employees that are charged to the Health Insurance Reserve Fund. We have pre-Medicare retirees and post-Medicare retirees, and they are both charged to the OPEB Trust Fund. So active employees and pre-Medicare retirees pay the same premiums and use the same insurance plans. So our consultant, Mark Lynn, he'll be reviewing the development of premiums shortly. But I want to bring to your attention that the health insurance surplus is the result of the distribution of the healthcare costs. Active employee costs are lower, resulting in a surplus when it comes to the health insurance fund, while pre-Medicare retirees tend to be higher costs, resulting in costs exceeding premiums going into the OPEB Trust Fund. To help offset this, it's our intent to transfer surplus funds from the Health Insurance Reserve Fund to the OPEB Trust Fund. So rather than a cut, we would transfer these funds into OPEB to help increase the assets in our fund and improve our overall position in the OPEB fund. So that's kind of where we're heading, as opposed to a cut. If it was a $38 million cut, it may help this year, but next year with spending affordability, it will hurt us because we will not have much room in our growth. Next year, we know we're going to have to add $12.5 million a year to get up to our PAYGO level in OPEB. So having such a large cut and having spending affordability built on this year's budget with that cut, it would put us in a difficult position next year. Any questions on that?
Yeah, as you could see in the package, we had also suggested what Director Blades pointed out, that as an alternative, that it could definitely be put into OPEB. So thank you.
So can we mark this? We are in agreement.
I noted it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Rogers.
just one other little note to that. In one of my roles as administration liaison to the Healthcare Review Committee, I would say this would be of concern. The Healthcare Review Committee, of course, is all the representation from all the unions, and they have in the past expressed concerns when monies were used out of the reserve for other kinds of things. And their urging to us is to ensure that surplus funds be directed toward healthcare issues for particularly in this OPEB piece. So placing that money in any additional money into OPEB, it definitely reinforces to them that we are indeed working aggressively to fix the OPEB issue that we inherited. So I just wanted to share that because we have a lot of reserves and the surpluses with the Healthcare Review Committee.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on the surplus?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go right ahead, Councilman.
Question for Director Blades. Is it fair to assume that the 38 million, if we were to apply that to OPEB, would be equivalent to the 3 years of reaching our OPEB goals in terms of where we ought to be, or accelerate it by 3 years?
Well, the 3 year, it wouldn't accelerate it because our goal is to get up to the PAYGO level. And currently PAYGO is around, I think it's around 100 million to 110 million. And right now with the FY22 budget, we are at 70 million as far as an appropriation. The transfer will help with our assets. It'll help it'll reduce that difference as far as the level funded based on our liabilities. But until we get our appropriation up to 100 million to 110 million, based on whatever that PAYGO dollar is going to be, that's when we'll reach it. So although this is tremendously helpful to the fund, it doesn't change our appropriation and getting up to the PAYGO level.
And it's general fund that we're talking about?
Yes.
Because I was just thinking, if it were, let's say, hypothetically, this is all hypothetical conversation, if it were 31 million that went to OPEB and then $1 million to each council district for capital project or some need, that would be an interesting approach, wouldn't it?
I think that the unions would be upset if we took, the argument has been that they don't like money coming out of the retirement fund to go to other things. So for us to appropriate it to the capital budget, I don't think they'd be very happy.
Okay, I just thought I would throw that out there.
I concur, Councilmember Patoka. This is one of their big issues about, because where the monies come from, when it's in the reserve, it's coming from payments that they feel are overages from employees, and it should be reinvested in healthcare. They've been very, very explicit about their positions on this. Believe me, we can have some conversations if you want.
Fair enough. Got it.
Well, I certainly understand a big chunk of it is their money, right?
Yes.
So any other questions or comments? Director Blades, if you want to
Sure, I'll move on to the OPEB funding and plans to restore the contribution. We are fully committed to addressing the soaring costs of retiree benefits in 2 ways. We are continually reviewing the plan options and offerings in relation to costs. And as discussed, we're ramping up the OPEB contributions, which, is demonstrated by the supplemental appropriation that you approved, taking the FY21 appropriation up to $60 million and the FY22 budget request of $70 million. It's no secret that retiree benefits create extreme cost pressures on the county. Full funding in FY22 benefits payments of $102 million is approximately equal to 70% of the required contribution to the retirement system. In other jurisdictions, I've had to do major adjustments to OPEB plans to make them affordable. Harford County has closed its plans to new hires, except the Sheriff's Department on 7/1/2010. They closed the plan to civilian employees of the Sheriff's Department on 7/1/2019. The new employees get a defined contribution to OPEB, their OPEB plan. Charles County enclosed its OPEB plan to all employees hired after 7/1/2016. New employees get a defined contribution OPEB. The city of Chesapeake, Virginia eliminated all post-65 coverage on 1/1/2016. This includes retirees who were already receiving a benefit. So again, our funding goals are to have PAYGO equal to the amount of benefit payments in FY26. This will require a commitment of around $2.5 million a year until we get there, $12.5 million a year until we get there. Just as a side note, when you consider spending affordability increases each year, right off the bat, that's $12.5 million of growth that will be eaten by getting OPEB back to its proper funding levels. And our ultimate goal is to have our liability funded 50% by 2050. The others brought up a question about compliance with the code. And to be honest, I have not had time to discuss this issue with the county attorney. I will have that conversation with him, and in the event that he finds that we're not in compliance with the code as far as the appropriations, how we are appropriating and getting back up into PAYGO levels, we will identify a strategy to come into compliance.
Okay.
So with that, I'm going to transfer the next question, number 3, the impact of changes that have been made with Labor First, over to Deputy Director Kevin Reed.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and council members. As you know, we transitioned to Labor First for mandatory prescription program on January 1 of this year, and an optional Medicare Advantage program. And there was definitely savings that were made when that switch was made. But I'd like to caution that, we're still climbing this OPEB mountain, and the mountain is very large. As you can see on page 8 of the chart on page 8 of the auditor's analysis, this is our plan PAYGO contributions going forward. And as Ed discussed, we're looking at, a $12.5 million increase per year. The goal is, again, is twofold: to fund the benefit that goes out at 100% in 2026, and to be 50% funded in 2050. And to Councilman Patoka's question, if we were to be able to transfer some from the active account into OPEB, that could, our goals would remain. It would help us get closer to that. But again, looking at 2050, we're still only 50% funded. So how we do that is twofold. We need to control our costs, and we need to ramp up funding. So our Labor First plans are fully insured, which we do have cost control around that, since we understand what we're buying from the menu of Labor First that they offer. This is for when we're looking at OPEB liability and what it decrease. It's important to note that this is for our Medicare eligible retirees only, our post-65 population. Our pre-Medicare population has the same insurance plan and set up as our actives. However, again, it's paid out of our OPEB fund, and as Mr. Blades mentioned earlier, that's kind of the difference you see in the levels as they move forward. Our Medicare eligible retirees for general government make up about 58% of our retirees. So when we take that all into account, the Labor First moving to that mandatory prescription and the Medicare Advantage decrease our Medicare eligible costs by about 21%. But when we look at our total OPEB accounting liability, we have to include the pre-Medicares, and we do have some younger retirees on our plan, especially in public safety. We also have to add in life insurance. And so we're looking at the total net cost. We're looking at about a 5% estimated reduction in PAYGO cost. But that is about from FY22, our original benefit payment that we were looking at was about $117 million without Labor First. And then with the implementation of Labor First, we're looking at about $102 million benefit payment, which is a $14 million or 12% decrease for FY22. So there are significant savings to be had there. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the members? Okay, hearing none. Yes, Ms. Rogers.
We just want you to know that we are continuing this Liver First effort with Community College came on board with us this year because when you look at the entire enterprise and how that is impacted by the Medicare eligible employees or retirees, we need to look enterprise wide. And we're also working with the school system to continue their transition, particularly this year, to the required prescription plans. So we're looking enterprise wide. So it's not just about general government, but it's across the board.
Okay. Any additional, yes, Councilman Perk?
Yeah, just a quick follow-on question to that is in relation to Labor First, specifically with the school system, do we know where we're at in regard to moving the school system more aggressively toward Labor First, or where are we at? I know that's been an ongoing issue, but it's just any update on where the Baltimore County Public Schools is in relation to embracing Labor First more, considering what other groups have done as well?
Well, if you look at last year, they offered the plans voluntarily. They offered prescription plan, the Labor First prescription plan, and they offered the Medicare Advantage plan. But given their enrollment was significantly impacted by the ransomware attack, they did not get a good uptake. Now, we have specifically discussed Labor First with Dr. Williams directly. I wrote directly to Dr. Williams, given the projections and the savings. They're on board with us. We have a restart meeting for FY22. We have to, of course, get their union support, get TABCO support. So we've been in dialogue with them. But we're starting where we were last year when we went forward. So this month and over the summer, making sure that we can do the same kind of education plan with retirees, because our transition went very, very smoothly. We did not have major problems in transitioning. So it is our expectation, and Dr. Williams has committed to moving forward for this year. So I feel we're in a much better place than we were last year. We just have to have the union's commitment.
Okay. Councilman Perk, good?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at Exhibit 5, Baltimore County OPEB plan, which I think is really, really nicely done to the audit staff, whoever put that together. And looking at this, whether it's fiduciary net position or, whether it's the OPEB costs, and I know it's all looking backward, but I think it'd be, and maybe it's just a pipe dream and maybe it's impossible to do, but it would be great to see a graph like this. And then looking forward, maybe 1 or 2 fiscal years, if Baltimore County Public Schools, for example, adopts more along the Labor First agreement, how could this graph change and what that would mean? Or like if we fund OPEB by X amount of dollars, say the following fiscal year, what would happen to this fiduciary net position? But just a way to kind of make some of these decisions we're making all the time a little more meaningful, to be able to kind of almost graph out the impacts of what we're doing, what decisions we're making as a county, and then how these numbers could change. That I don't know if it's possible because there's so many assumptions that have to go into that. I get that. But it would also be a really helpful kind of visual to understand the decision making, and if this happens, then what else happens, based on forward-looking kind of projections. Graphs, especially graphs, are very helpful to kind of see the impact of some of the decisions we're making or some of the decisions that we're not making. Just I don't know, just on my fun list of kind of nice things.
Thank you, Councilman Quirk. Any additional questions or comments?
Chair, if you'd like, I'll move on to the next question as far as in the package.
Yes.
So the next question gets into how the renewal premiums are determined. And if, with your permission, I'll turn this over to Mark Lynn, our consultant from Bolton, who develops those premiums.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mark.
So Bolton has been assisting the county setting premium rates for many years. We use a consistent methodology when we do this each year. And the way we do it is we look at the most recent 2 years of healthcare claims and enrollment data. That's the base period. We adjust the prescription claims for the rebates that the county gets back quarterly. And those net claims then are projected forward to the renewal period. And remember that your renewal is on a calendar year, so it's always 6 months off cycle of the fiscal year. So we project those claim expenses forward using a 5% annualized healthcare trend assumption. So we assume healthcare costs overall are going up 5% a year. And that's based on what we've actually seen with your own healthcare usage over a period of time. The 5% number comes from your own data. And then if there have been changes in benefits historically or coming up, we adjust the projected claims to account for that. For 2020 only, we did adjust claims upward due to the suppression of elective procedures as a result of COVID. So then we take those projected healthcare claims and we add the fixed costs. So you have certain costs that are on a per head basis. That would be administrative costs and reinsurance. You purchase stop loss reinsurance for individual members who have very high claims. So then we take those total projected costs, claims plus the fixed costs, we add them together, and then we compare that to where your current rates are multiplied by enrollment. And that's how we come up with what the rate change is going to be for the upcoming year. Now, in light of the discussion that we've already had, I think it's important to reinforce a couple of points that that Ed and Kevin made, which is when we set these rates, the rates are the same for active employees and pre-Medicare retirees. You're not unusual in that. Many jurisdictions do it that way. But despite the rates being the same, the retirees, pre-Medicare retirees, use healthcare at a much higher rate than the active employees. For the most recent 2-year period that we looked at, it was 78% higher per head for the pre-Medicare retirees compared to the active employees. Now, overall, we expect that the rates that are set are going to break even. In other words, they will cover exactly the costs of the claims plus the fixed costs over the course of the calendar year. And if they are set accurately, and they have been, I mean, I've looked at the actual results over a number of fiscal years, and over the last 5 fiscal years, except for FY20, which was unusual with the lower healthcare claims due to COVID, the other years we were always within 1.7% in the aggregate, the rates versus the actual results. So if they're set accurately, then the health insurance fund, the 38 fund, is always going to experience a surplus because that's the fund for the active employees. But then the flip side of it is the OPEB fund is going to experience a corresponding loss or deficit. If the rate's set exactly, it's going to be that same dollar amount you saw as a surplus in the health insurance fund, you'll see as a deficit in the OPEB fund. So I think, you know, what Ms. Rogers said about the healthcare advisory committee and the way that they're scrutinizing this. I'm just going to say that I think the result of this, where that surplus is going to be used for the OPEB funding, makes a lot of sense, because that's where the surplus is coming from in the health insurance fund. It's all healthcare related, and then to use that for the OPEB fund makes perfect sense to me. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that any of you have.
Any questions from any of them now? Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, the second part of that question was related to the rate holidays. This past December, we offered a rate holiday where county employees did not have, and retirees actually, did not have to pay or make their insurance contribution in the month of December. And that was really more of a realignment as we move to our new Workday software package for HR. We are moving from a pay in advance system where in December, employees would have been paying for their January premiums, moving to a pay-go where we did not collect in December. So in January, employees paid their January premium. So it was a realignment of the charging of employees of their premiums. And at this point, the budget does not anticipate another rate holiday this year.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions or comments?
And our final section is related to a decrease in workers' comp and liability, and that is based on the IBNR and claim reserves determined by our actuary. In FY21, we saw an increase in the appropriation from FY20 based on historic reserves needed for workers' comp claims and other claims filed. So this, quite frankly, it's a reduction in the forecast for the reserves needed, which resulted in the FY22 decrease.
Okay. Questions or comments from the member? Hearing none. Is that it, Director Blades?
Yes, sir.
All right. We were right on time. Woo, we're right on time. We're moving right along to retirement and Social Security. Lauren Smeltz.
Yeah, good afternoon. The proposed fiscal year 2022 budget for retirement and Social Security totals $174.7 million, an increase of $16.4 million or 10.4% over the fiscal year 2021 budget. The retirement portion of the budget increases by $15.5 million or 11.2%, primarily due to two factors: an $8 million increase in the county's annual required contribution to the employee's retirement system, which was calculated by the system's actuary as of January 1st of 2021, and a $7.5 million contribution to the Police, Fire, and Widows Pension Fund. The Social Security portion of the budget increases by $912,000 or 4.5%. Due to an increase in FICA contributions that are associated with the proposed budget's higher salaries. On page 2, you will see the budget history of the program and the composition of the proposed budget. On page 4, the analysis identifies various fiscal year 2022 budget highlights, and beginning on page 5 are the related topics for discussion, including the county's annual required contribution to the retirement system, the contribution to the Police, Fire, and Widows Pension Plan, that there will be no COLA for retirees, and the financial condition of the retirement system. With regard to potential budget reductions, Social Security contributions would be reduced to the extent that any reductions are made to salary and salary-related expenses in agency budgets. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Director Blades.
Okay, Director Blades.
Okay. Retirement. I will do my best to keep you awake. So the section 1 of the of the package asks about proposed or forthcoming legislation. You do have a retirement bill that has been submitted. It's Bill 4821. And this really covers several things. First, the county and the FOP agreed to revise the eligibility for option 7 under the options available to the police department. Option 7 is revised. It's going to 25 years of credible service from 25 years of service as a Baltimore County police officer. And option 7 provides for a 50% survivorship benefit to the beneficiary at no cost to the employee, and also allows for a substitute beneficiary in the case of divorce or death. The actuary estimated the first year cost of this benefit is at $491,000 starting in FY 2023. Other labor unions may or may not negotiate for this benefit. The intent of this change with the FOP is to aid in the recruitment of lateral classes. Lateral classes are officers from other police departments transferring to Baltimore County. It's a shorter academy, and lateral classes, police officers are on the street sooner than a traditional recruit class. Also in the bill will be is related to credible service for the military. Historically, the county has provided up to 4 years of credible service for military time at no cost, provided that the member was not receiving a military pension. The law office has advised us that the county law conflicts with federal law. And as a result, the county is changing its law to comply with the federal law. So members who are receiving a military pension will also receive up to 4 years credible service at no cost if they are not, even if they are receiving a military pension. The cost for this change is unknown at this time, as we do not know how many of our members, our active employees, have military service. We don't collect that data. And finally, the county, when preparing Council Bill 3620 to change to, sections 30-1-305 and 5-1-219 of the code, those two sections were overlooked. However, the cost of the benefits were included in the actuary's estimate. So this is really just a technical amendment, a technical correction on two sections that were not included in Council Bill 3620. And that takes care of that portion of the question. Any questions?
Any questions from the members? Yes, Councilman Burke.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. Appreciate that, Ed. So it sounds like a pretty significant change in regard to the military service for the police specific. That's a big one.
That's a big one. That's significant. Yes.
Yeah, and but we don't totally know the fiscal impact yet, because we're still trying to see
who is going to be eligible. Yes.
Well.
And okay. Yeah, that's actually I'm glad to hear that. I know that's something that it might help a lot with recruitment, and I know there's quite a few police that will be very happy. And it's up to 4 years. I heard you say?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Ms. Rogers, if you could, I'll go after you, Ms. Rogers. You go ahead. Then.
So it was brought to our attention, we were not in compliance with the law. That was one of the bigger issues when this whole thing came up. So it's just something that was a sleeper, that when this was changed federally, we did not come into compliance.
Well, let me add that I am happy to hear that we were able to resolve this issue, because service members felt as though they were being discriminated against in terms of if a person, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if a person did 10 years in the military and did not retire from the military, they received credit for their military time. But if a person did 20 years in the military and had a pension, then we were not giving them credit for the 20 years or any portion of it. But the person who did 5 years or 10 years they received credit for the 3 years or 4 years that they were in the military. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
Yes, up to 4 years. Yes, if they were not getting a pension from the military.
Yeah,
That's
so
correct.
so number one, I'm happy we got that resolved, because to me, I sort of sided with the employees. I felt like if you did 10 years, you got 4 years credit. But if you did 20 years and you happen to get a pension from the military, you got nothing. So to me, that was a problem. So I'm glad we took care of that. The second part to that is clearly we can figure out what it will cost. I don't think it'll be that much. And I think the cost is every employee who retired from the military, we can figure that out. And number two, every employee that may be in the reserves that may in fact has a possibility of hitting a retirement age prior to, well, hitting a retirement age. If they're in the service in the military right now, they can get the 4 years. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'm glad we fixed that. Any additional questions or comments on this issue? Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I do want to, I forgot to mention that in addition to our cast, we've added Bob Burrows to the call for retirement. Bob is our investment and debt management administrator, so he will be helping me out with the retirement questions.
Okay, great.
So the next question in the package is related to the valuation of the retirement system. Currently, we are doing it on a calendar year, and we are switching it back to a fiscal year. The reason for doing so is it gives my office a better planning document by knowing the amount of the ERS contribution well in advance of budget formulation. It allows the retirement board sufficient time to review the assumptions and make any necessary changes. And it also allows the actuary sufficient time to prepare the final evaluation prior to the budget submission. Just as an example, this year I had to give Lauren and her office a draft of the valuation because it's not finalized. So switching to a fiscal year from a calendar year just gives us more time. And we've only done it for a calendar year, I think, for about 3 years. So we're just returning to the prior practice.
Okay, are there any questions or comments?
Okay, moving on to the police, fire, and widows pension fund and the contribution of $7.5 million in the FY22 budget. This fund is targeted, is the members are police officers, firefighters, and their widows. And they had to be hired prior to October 1st, 1959. And the plan is designed to pay police and fire retirees 50% of their grade and step where the member was when they retired, and 25% goes to widows. So if I retired at max step in 1969 for a police officer, I am getting max step 50% of the max step of a police officer today. That's my pension. So it's a pretty nice pension. So until 1989, the pension was paid for on a pay-go basis. And in 1989, the county issued $171 million in pension funding bonds to fund the liabilities of the plan. So in 2007, the county had a loss in commercial paper of $21.3 million, and it transferred that loss to this fund. In 2017, the county received $18.6 million back through a settlement fund from the state of Maryland, and the proceeds were not returned to the retirement fund. Instead, those funds were used to air condition schools. So that's part of this, the reason of we're putting that money back in now. So as of, just to give you a little more additional statistical information, as of June 30th, 2020, there were 136 participants in this plan. And the actuary calculated the net pension liability to be $15.8 million with a funded status of 47%, based on assets of $13.7 million and liabilities of $29.5 million. As of April 30th, 2021, there were 111 participants in the plan, and the average age is 88 years old, ranging from 73 to 106. So
God bless that guy, that person who's 106 years old.
absolutely, I'm sure he's
God
probably
bless
been
them all.
retired longer than he worked, or she.
Absolutely.
So the
Odds
additional,
are it was a he.
yes. So the additional 7.5 million contribution reduces the net pension liability to 8.3 million, or a funded status of 72%. And any
Okay.
questions?
Any questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Rogers.
And this was another one of those things that we found out about, and we wanted to make sure that we were ensuring that the pension plans for these elderly individuals that the county has covered all this time, and did not want that fund to move toward insolvency.
Thank you. Move right along, Director Blades.
Okay, question 3 is related to COLAs. And it's good we're having this conversation because you're going to get a lot of phone calls. Ms. Rogers is going to get a lot of phone calls. I'm going to get a lot of phone calls. The county executive is going to get a lot of phone calls.
I have been getting a lot of phone calls.
So for COLAs, Article 5, Section 5-1-235 of the county code addresses COLAs. Okay, to be eligible for a COLA, a member has to have retired before July 1st, 2010, or the member has to have at least 20 years of creditable service if hired prior to July 1st, 2007, or 25 years of creditable service if hired on or after July 1st, 2007. The member also has to be retired for at least 5 years, or 5 years if they're in a, or 4 years rather, if they're in a drop to be eligible for the COLA. In order to pay a COLA, there needs to be sufficient funds to reduce at least 1% COLA. And each 1% COLA in the retirement system costs nearly $20 million. So Section 5-1-235 talks about the Post-Retirement Increase Fund, which is called, or PRIF for short. The current balance of the PRIF is $1.8 million. And the question is, how does money get into the PRIF? So the board sets the PRIF rate and methodology, the retirement board. In order for funds to be added to the PRIF, the average net return rate over the last 8 calendar years must exceed 7 7/8%. For the past 8 years, ending with calendar year 2020, the average net return has been 7.3%. So we haven't hit that 7 7/8, so no money is going into the PRIF. Over the last 10 years, the fund has averaged 7.2% net of fees. So just applying that rate to the current $3.14 billion market value of the retirement system assets, it's an annual investment income of $226 million. Just for the record, we are planning on, as I said earlier, we are moving to a fiscal year for our actuarial analysis, and we are discussing with the planning board, revisiting a lot of the assumptions that are made with the plan. So those types of review, including the COLA review, are planned for this summer. But yes, for FY22, there is no planned COLA for retirees.
So, Director Blades, as I understand it, it's been like one COLA in the last 1% increase in the last 10 years. That's probably about right.
I believe that's correct. Bob, can you confirm?
Yes, that's about correct.
And I do recognize that one item we use in our calculations, it went from 10 years down to 7.
8.
Down to 8. So we're in the right direction. But I'm wondering, is there any ideas or thoughts, or even if it's a one-time payment, is there any plans to try to do something so that our hardworking men and women who retired can at least see some type of COLA other than 1% in 10 years? It seems like what has been said to me is this system has been set up in a way to absolutely make sure they do not get a COLA. And I'm thinking about, I recognize, we have to do what we can to make sure the system is solvent. But I think about my COLA that I get, it's based off of an index coming out of the New York Times, based off of some economic index, which determines what my COLA will be. And here it seems like we have this, I'm not going to call it convoluted, but it's certainly complicated. And you have to jump through a series of hoops before a person could get a COLA, and it seems like it's very difficult to do.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I've heard the same thing where people feel that it's set up to prevent a COLA. My biggest concern is that the benefit is there for everyone in perpetuity, and when I get there, that it's still there. I understand what you're saying. We are going to look at it this summer, but for now, there is no COLA in the budget.
All right, thank you very much. I look forward to working with you and having further discussions on the issue, because people are putting a squeeze on me.
Mr. Chair,
My colleagues. Go ahead.
just a quick question. So you indicated that, I want to understand if that's correct. There's been a 1% COLA over 10 years, not 1% each year?
That's correct.
Whoa, that's like 1/10 of 1% if you average it over a 10, which is almost nothing.
I mean, the COLA is supposed to be a reflection of inflation, right? To make sure the money you receive today is the same value as tomorrow. So I recognize that there are times when you're not going to get a COLA, because if there's no inflation, then there's no reason to get a COLA. But I certainly think it's worth us discussing to make sure that when in fact there is a inflationary measure or some indication of inflation, that the employees would in fact get a boost.
I just wonder if there are other jurisdictions, equivalent jurisdictions, that are providing COLAs for their retirees at a rate of 1/10 of 1%.
Well,
You're on mute, Mr. Chair.
I was saying that, oftentimes I can talk about like my pension, which is based off of an economic indicator, and it's all negotiated with the contract. And the idea is to guard against inflation. And that's it. How we get there is up for discussion. But I do think we need to do what we can to guard against inflation and make sure that, people, the value of their money is the same tomorrow as it is today. Yet, the solvency is also very important. And
Yes, it is.
That Director Blades, that, one of the last great places for a direct benefit pension is the government.
Yep.
As opposed to some other places. So many places are going to direct contributions, where they give you a contribution to your 401k and say, good luck, have at it. So
Yes.
I recognize the importance of that and living every day with it. So I understand both sides of the coin. Any more questions or comments?
One more. I don't want to beat this horse to death, Mr. Chairman Jones, but I just wonder if MACO has data on what equivalent jurisdictions are providing their retirees. Because as you said, it's tied to the inflation rate. And I doubt if the inflation rate, I mean, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's higher than 1/10 of 1%.
I would imagine that MACO has that data.
I'm sure they do.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, Director Blades.
Mr. Chairman, for the last question regarding the system's financial condition and investment policies, I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Burrows.
Okay, Mr. Burrows.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the council. As you know, we have a Board of Trustees that oversees the employees' retirement system, led by Chairman Mike Day and Director Ed Blades. The board does rely on the advice of NEPC, one of the largest independent investment consulting firms in the industry, and Cassie, a minority consulting firm. Both consulting firms attend board meetings monthly or as required by the board. The fund itself is well diversified by asset class and includes U.S. large cap equities, U.S. small cap equities, mid cap equities as well, developed international equities, emerging market equities, real estate, risk parity, diversified fixed income, and private markets. The fund is also well diversified by investment manager, including 25 investment firms and 47 private equity funds. NEPC reviews each of the investment managers with the board on a regular basis. Asset classes are regularly rebalanced toward the target allocation. Passive investments, and this is one of the questions, comprise 82% of the U.S. large cap asset class, 36% of the developed international asset class, and 10% of the fixed income asset class. Actively managed minority and women-owned firms comprise 14% of the total fund. NEPC presents an annual allocation plans to the board. The board reviews and adopts the plan that they feel is expected to achieve the best risk-adjusted returns. Universe rankings vary based primarily on the asset allocation of the fund. The consultant projects return assumptions annually by asset class for 10 and 30 years. And the consultant also projects the private equity to be the highest returning asset class in both their 10 and 30-year projections. Any questions on that?
Yes, Councilman Quirk.
Yeah, just a quick question. Just looking at our percentile rankings. So we're still at the bottom quarter of our peer group. Is that right?
The bottom quarter for what period?
It looks like current year 2011 to 2020 system experience 7.74 gross of fee, ranked the 75th percentile. If it was public funds, universe medium gross of fee was 8.3. So are we still, am I reading this wrong, or are we still basically like versus our peer group
I believe you're reading it correctly, and obviously we don't want to be in that percentile. This is discussed pretty regularly at the board meetings and was this morning as well. I think the most recent returns have improved, and some of these rankings move around rather quickly too. But generally, it's 90% is based on asset allocation. So the board could increase their risk, but I'm not sure if they want to do that right now.
And are we following the consultants' advice and recommendations, or do we sometimes kind of go a different direction from what our consultants are recommending overall?
Most of the time, they follow what the consultant has recommended. I'm going to say majority of the time, if not all of the time.
And we're still ranking pretty low. I mean, you could flip a coin and probably do a little better than that, I would think.
Well, I would hope not, but it is kind of what it is right now, where we actively discuss each of the managers every meeting, determine which managers we should retain, which ones we need to let go of, and I can tell you that the board takes this very seriously.
So Councilman Quirk, obviously we know you have a tremendous amount of experience. Are you saying that we're not doing the returns like I heard you say we're close to the bottom? So are we anywhere near like the Standard & Poor's or any of those other returns?
I would say if this was a grading period, I would give it a failing grade. You know, honestly, I generally like investments that are in their top quartiles, or at least the top half, but not the bottom quarter. And so something's up here. If we're paying consultants to basically get what I would consider not mediocre returns, but below average returns, something seems to. I mean, I would probably fire the consultant or look to do something differently. That's from 2011 to 2020. It's pretty lousy if you ask me.
Okay, so clearly, the better we do, the more money we have in terms of making the system solvent. And if we ever were to make a very, very poor decision, is the citizens of Baltimore County are responsible, or just the pension system, Director Blade?
I'm sorry, you broke up on the last part of the question.
So I guess the question is, if we made some very, very poor decisions, it's the citizens of Baltimore County that will be responsible for making those pension payments, correct?
Well, if we were making more in investments, our contribution would be lower, I would suggest, or actually our funded status, we're at 62.4% funded based on our liability. And so our funded status would improve.
Okay, so I guess my point is to Councilman Burks, he's highlighting the fact that if we're not doing as well as we could, it's costing us more money each and every time we pay out a portion of the pension. So what would be the reason or the rationale why we would be doing so poorly compared to others?
I think that's something we need to dig into. I'd like to have a conversation, follow with Councilman Quirk, just to see if he does have suggestions, because we do frequently go with the NEPC recommendation, and just to think through the best way to revisit what they do recommend. Should this board be challenging them more? Those are things that have to be discussed. Remember, the recommendation, it's a board vote that makes the decisions on the investment profile. So it's not just a single person making that recommendation or making that decision.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Is that it, Director Blade?
That is all.
Anyone else? Okay, so I guess this will conclude our hearings for today. I appreciate everybody. Appreciate them taking the time. Director Blades, I look forward to, and I trust you're going to be really taking a good look at this, because this is big bucks, and
Yes, sir.
It's affecting our retirees. It's affecting what we're paying, and it's probably driving that whole COLA discussion as well. So it's very important that we sort of step on the gas, and anytime you're at the bottom of the list of anything, that tells me that there's room for improvement because other people are doing better. So if other people are doing better, maybe we should start by talking to the people who are doing better and finding out what are they doing and who are they using and what is their rationale and how can it be that they're doing so much better than we. Because I really have faith and confidence in the people here in Baltimore County, and I think we have the best or just as good as anybody else. And if somebody else doing better than us, then there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think we need to be aggressive and move very quickly to that position, because I think we can do it.
Will do.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wonder if MACO would also have data on the performance of investment portfolios for the various counties in the state. And so we have some level of an apples to apples comparison of how we're performing.
Well, we have a comparison right there in the chart. We already know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms.
I think
Rogers.
the other thing is that we know we need to do further analysis on the aggressiveness of the funds. I was in a recent discussion with another organization about the same thing, the aggressiveness and looking, but it goes back to benchmark, which we believe in, and we're going to look at both of these issues.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't know an awful lot about investments as much as Councilman Quirk or, you know, Director Blade, but I do know when the good times are here, you're supposed to take it for everything it's worth. And realizing that there's always going to be some downside, but oftentimes, from my experience, when things are going well, when the things start to turn sour, you've made enough from the good time that you can really switch positions and slow down and not suffer as much. So even though you take an initial hit when things first turn. But anyway, that's a philosophical discussion, but we're at the bottom, we can do better. And I'm
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can do much better.
Thank you, Councilman Quirk, for pointing that out. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.